Many nations and cultures are interwoven in the land of Crimea. Today, more than 65% of the population are Russians. Since the early Middle Ages, history and culture of the peninsula have become an integral part of the history and culture of Russia. Crimea joined Russia more than 200 years ago, and later it became part of Russian Soviet Republic. However, in 1954, Nikita Khrushchev presented the Crimean region to the Ukraine as a token of friendship, and although the population was transferred, it was not a critical issue, as there were nothing like Russophobia in Soviet Ukraine at that time. When Ukraine got independence in 1991, the people of Crimea expressed their wishes in a referendum on the status of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. Then, 81% of the Crimean electors, by a large majority of 93%, voted to restore the Crimean Republic as a USSR member and a participant of the Union Treaty. 97% of Sevastopol citizens voted for the special autonomous status of the city. It seemed that the time of Crimean independence had started, but in March 1995, Ukrainian authorities disregarded these referendum results, and the wishes expressed by the people of Crimea in that referendum were violated by Ukraine. Ukraine, why suddenly, cancelled the 1992 year's constitution of the Crimean Republic, displaced Crimean president from the presidency, downgraded Crimea to just an administrative unit, and deprived it of its political and economical rights. The rules of international law, provisions of the Declaration of Human Rights, the OSCE Act, provisions of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, all were neglected. Today, 60% of Ukrainian citizens prefer Russian in everyday life. Since the Ukrainian Declaration of Independence, the state has not just used Ukrainian language propaganda, but also has attempted artificial implanting of the language upon the Russian people. Russian names and passports are distorted. Administrative work is in Ukrainian. School textbooks are printed entirely in the Ukrainian language. Most movies and all commercials in the country are also in Ukrainian. The number of Russian schools has decreased to virtually none. These acts could only be defined as a national and cultural genocide exercised by the state towards its own citizens. A situation has been created where the state and its people speak different languages.
Як називається?
Оленка.
Оленка, яка красуня, ніколи не будь Альоною. Бо якщо ти станеш Альоною, дитиночко, треба пакувати валізи і виїжджати до Московії.
There is not such a country in the modern history where the mother tongue of the popular majority is not adopted as the state language. But we have it here in Ukraine. These facts has led to a sensitive reaction in Crimea, where more than 95% of people speak Russian. People have felt that they were deprived of their basic rights. In the meantime, the European countries have taken no notice of such a state of affairs and have recognized only the Crimean Tatar rights, though they constitute the minority of the Crimean population. At the same time, problems of Russians in Crimea were suppressed despite their scale and evidence, and the fact that 76.5% of Crimean people consider Russian their native language. The senior officials of independent Ukraine gambled on the forced establishment of the Ukrainian language in all spheres of state life and on the adaptation of nationalistic Russophobia ideology. And the radical nationalistic movements were not prohibited in Ukraine, but rather purposely fostered. Now, we face in Ukraine such actively functioning organizations which can be identified as neo-Nazis. They advocate superiority of Ukrainians over other nations. Among them are Freedom, Svoboda, National Alliance, Right Sector, Youth Union Our Ukraine, Youth Movement, Молодой Рух, Young Enlightenment, Молода Просвіта, For Ukraine, За Україну, and many more organizations like them. Their anti-humanistic ideology advocates that weak nations are to be eliminated. The supreme nation is to have complete power over other states. All of these organizations use the internet and print media for advocating Nazism.
Сегодня национал-социалистическая идеология это будущее Украины. Я из России.
Из России.
Я из России. В Москве так нельзя ходить, здесь можно.
Ви москаля! Ви москаля! Складайте труби!
Московські собаки! Ось собака теж животне!
Це москаль ти! Жидяра! Один і другий жидяра! Смерть ворон! Смерть ворон!
Буде Україна рідна! Буде ненька самостійна! Москалі! На ножі! На ножі!
Росія – це віковічний ворог України, і поки існує Російська імперія в будь-якій формі, доти справжня реальна національна незалежність українського народу неможлива.
In the Lvov region, participants of the Svoboda organization, which is one of the three main opposition parties heading the protests, have reburied 15 SS soldiers solemnly and with full military honors. And now we can see an annual event, the reconstruction of the Second World War events showing how Olomupa brigades beat Soviet army. In 2012, Victory Day parade was fueled by nationalistic mobs. Teenagers in mass and with Nazi symbols beat veterans and picked off St. George's ribbon, which is the symbol of Russian soldiers who succeeded against fascism. At the beginning of the year 2014, the party controlling Lvov today headed a torchlight procession in memory of Stepan Bandera, the leader of Ukrainian Nazis whose troops fought on the Hitler's side during World War II and took part in the extermination of Jews, Russians and Poles. But even more extremist groups such as the Right Sector came to the fore during the 2014 coup. The situation has become more and more threatening. Not only humanitarian infringements, but physical extermination has hung over Russians. As soon as nationalists came to power, they banned Russian language, threatened to impose criminal penalties for using it, demanded to cancel the taboo on fascist propaganda. They also outlawed political parties protecting the interest of the Russian population in Ukraine. Among the members of the nationalistic government, there is not one delegate from southeastern Ukraine. All this happening reminds us of Germany in the 30s, when National Socialists came to power. The threat to life of Russian people has become absolutely real. We got threats, insults, prosecution for using Russian language. All this comes from political leaders intending to take part in the presidential elections in Ukraine. As earlier Maidan called upon people to overthrow legitimate authority, now they call for them to take up arms and kill Russians in the Crimea.
Народ будь озброїться, коли ця наволоч не захоче уйти з нашої землі, ми їх знищимо! Україна понад усе!
Я знаю, настане той час, коли Україна розкинеться в своїх етнічних межах від Сяну по Кавказ. І Дон, Кубань, Терек, наші корінні землі і присягання буде наше.
That's why Crimea reacted, arranged for its own self-defense and asked Russia for help. It was the moment when the whole world saw that the majority of the Crimean populations are Russians. Russians by nationality, Russians by spirit. They are Russians demanding to recognize their rights, the right to know their history and to be proud of it, the right to speak their native language. Crimea got a unique, exclusive chance to restore historical justice. The referendum on the 16th of March showed that the future of the Crimean nation is together with Russia, together with their brothers. Crimea has created a secure barrier from fascism, but we must remember that for millions of Russians living in Ukraine, the fascist danger is still real. And as long as it is encouraged, Nazi genocide of Russians is real, and then the fascism can spread to Poland and further to European countries. impossible to pay no attention to the fascist activities in Ukraine. That's why Crimean people call upon other European nations to join Russia and help it in the battle against neo-Nazis. People of Crimea are and will be in the forefront among those who fight against fascism.